Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tale, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, and shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now let's get into today's tale. My parents left me $0 in their will and gave everything to my younger sister. They didn't know I'd secretly been paying their mortgage for 8 years and the house was in my name the whole time. So wait, Jenna said, blinking in disbelief as she read the will again. They didn't leave you anything? I shrugged, sipping lukewarm tea. Apparently not. But you were the one paying for everything. They knew that, right? I let out a breath. Guess not, or maybe they didn't care. She tossed the document onto the table. This has to be a mistake. I mean, it says, I get the house, Mom, and Dad wanted me to have it. I leaned back. Calm, it's not theirs to give. Jenna, it hasn't been for years. 8 years. Earlier, I made a decision that quietly shaped the rest of my life. My name is Claire. I'm 47 now, but back in 2015, I was standing in the driveway of my parents' aging house in Tacoma, Washington, wondering why I always ended up being the one who fixed everything my dad had just told me, flat out, that they were behind on the mortgage. It was the third time in a year he said it, like he was giving me a weather report, not ashamed, not apologetic, just, it resigned like, this was my job. My parents weren't reckless with money. Not exactly just perpetually bad at managing it. No savings. No retirement. Plan lots of put it on the card thinking. And a tendency to buy gifts they couldn't afford, usually for my younger sister Jenna. He was the star, the pretty one, the baby, and I was the fallback plan. Something broke, asked Claire. Something was overdue. Call Claire if life got hard. Guess who was footing the bill at first? I did what they asked. I wired money, then I wired more. Eventually I realized I'd given them nearly $20, 0 in a single year, just to keep them from defaulting on their mortgage. That's when I told them something had to change. I drove down one weekend, sat at the rickety old dining table and laid it out. You need stability, I told them. Let me refinance the house, put it in my name, I'll take over the payments and make sure you don't lose the roof over your heads. They looked uncomfortable, especially Dad. But when I explained it meant I'd handle everything, taxes, insurance, maintenance, he gave in begrudgingly. Just don't lord it over us, he muttered. I never did, not once in all those years. From 2015 on, I paid that mortgage every month like clockwork, set up, auto pay dealt with, every maintenance call, every late night plumbing emergency, every slow leak, and cracked window and rodent infestation. I even paid to replace the roof in 2019 when it started to buckle under a particularly harsh winter. Meanwhile, Jenna lived across the country in Austin. She visited maybe twice a year, Christmas, and one random weekend in the summer. She'd bring fancy wine, take selfies with Mom, post Miss these two on Instagram, and leave with a piece of heirloom jewelry, and never confronted her about it. It wasn't worth the drama. Besides, I figured I was doing this for my parents, not her. And they didn't complain, but they didn't thank me either. Not really. It became routine, quiet, dull, and deeply, deeply lonely. I started to resent it after a while. Every time I had to dip into my savings to cover one of their emergencies, every time. I put off my own dental work or car repairs because I just paid $3, $200 for a new water heater in their house every time they asked me if I was still single, with that pitying look, as if my whole life had been reduced to not having a husband or kids. They never saw what I was doing as love. They saw it as duty, and I accepted it because part of me still hoped that deep down they knew that it meant something. Then Dad died last spring. Massive heart attack. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived. Mom deteriorated fast. Alzheimer's had been slowly creeping in for years, but after Dad passed, she just vanished within a month. She couldn't remember where she was within 2. She forgot my name by the 3rd, she was gone. 2, I paid for everything, the cremations, the memorial, the catered food for them, mourners who pretended they remembered me from childhood birthday parties. Jenna helped organize the event, took the credit, posted photos with long captions about how hard it is to say goodbye. She cried pretty tears, hugged me for the cameras, and then disappeared for a week, a month. Later, I got a call from a lawyer. He'd been named the executive of my parents' will. I was expecting a formality. I thought they'd have left the house to me, or maybe split things between me and Jenna. Instead, the will said everything was to go to her, their possessions, their savings, and laughably, the house. I sat there in silence as the lawyer read it to me. Not even a mention of me, not a single item. No token, no letter. Jenna called me later. This is so weird, right? She said, half laughing. I mean, they must have just assumed. You'd be fine, you've always been independent. I didn't argue, I didn't scream, I just told her, the house is in my name, I've owned it since 2015. She paused what I've been paying for it, keeping it from foreclosure. It's mine legally, they had no right to. Leave it to anyone, but they wanted me to have it, she said, voice getting tight. Mom said, doesn't matter, I said, and I hung up. She tried to fight it, of course, took me to court, claimed Elder Abby, financial manipulation fraud, but I had everything, contracts, email threads, payment receipts, records of every transaction. She lost fast. The house was officially mine, not because of a trick or a loophole, but because I had quietly saved it for years. Because I did what they never acknowledged, what she never believed. I sold it a few months. Later didn't want it anymore. Too many ghosts in those walls used the money to finally fix my own place in Eugene, buy a car that didn't rattle, and take the first real vacation I'd had in a decade, and for the first time in my life, I stopped waiting for someone to thank me. Jenna didn't speak to me for a while, after the court ruling. At first, she sent angry texts, paragraphs full of exclamation points and accusations about how I'd manipulated our parents' stolen what was rightfully hers and disrespected their memory. I didn't respond. She escalated, left voicemail, scrying then, shouting then crying again. The messages always circled back to the same theme. They loved me more. I was their favorite. They wanted me to have that house. I didn't argue. I didn't even listen to all of them after a while. I just let them sit unheard. But deep down, her words clung like thorns. I didn't care about being the favorite. I just wanted to matter. I wanted some acknowledgement that what I did over those 8 years counted for something, even if they couldn't say thank you. I had always assumed, hoped, that it would show up somewhere. Eventually, instead, I'd been erased, not forgotten. Erased. The months after the house sale were oddly quiet. After years of budgeting down to the penny, of tracking utility bills and emergency fund depletion, I suddenly had a cushion. I wasn't rich, but for the first time in ages, I could breathe. I finally bought myself a new mattress, Addison set of winter tires, and went to a dentist without postponing the appointment 3 times. Silly things, but I'd postponed my own needs for so long that even that felt luxurious. I took a week off work and drove up the coast, just me and my dog Nova. We stayed in Akabin on Whitby Island. I hiked, I slept late, I read real books, not just emails and invoices. And every night I wrote in a journal, not because I thought I was profound, but because I was scared off, or getting who I was when I wasn't fixing something for someone else. But the thing about long silences is they always break. Jenna reappeared in July. She texted me one morning, "Can we talk face to face, please?" I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't seen her in person. Since the funeral, I wasn't sure I wanted to, but curiosity won. So did some lingering thread of hope, if I'm honest. We met at a coffee shop halfway between Eugene and Portland, neutral territory. She was already there when I arrived, wearing sunglasses indoors, sipping a drink through a straw like it might bite her. She didn't stand up when I came in, just gestured vaguely at the seat across from her. "Thanks for coming," she said, then went quiet. It took her a long time to speak again. She started, stopped, picked at the corner of a napkin. Finally, she said, "I didn't know about the mortgage, the house, any of it." I didn't reply, just looked at her. She shifted in her seat. "Mom and Dad, they never said anything, not once. I thought they were paying for it all along. I thought they owned it until they died. They didn't." My voice was flat. "I know that now," she said. "But Claire, why didn't you tell me?" I exhaled slowly, "Because it wouldn't have changed anything. You wouldn't have cared." "That's not fair," she said, leaning forward. "Isn't it?" I asked when Dad was in the hospital. Who did they call when the heater broke in the middle of winter? Who showed up with a space heater and stayed up all night waiting for the repair guy when they needed groceries, rides, pills, bills? Who handled it? Me. Not once did you offer. Not once did you ask if they were okay. She looked down. I didn't know how bad things were. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to, but she wasn't dumb. She just didn't want to look too closely, didn't want the burden. A long silence stretched between us. "I hated you for a while," she said finally, after the court stuff. "Really, really hated you, same." I said, "Not cray, just honestly." She winced. I kept thinking about what Mom said last Christmas before she got worse. She told me, "Jenna, you'll always have the house like it was promised." I thought it meant something. It did. I said to her, but she said to her, "Wasn't the one paying for it?" We sat in silence again. She kept looking at her cup like it held an answer. I didn't come here to fight. She said, "Good," I replied. I just wanted to explain and maybe apologize. I blinked. That was a word I hadn't expected. She looked up at me, eyes finally meeting mine. I was a crappy sister still. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, and I'm not asking for anything. I just needed to say that. I get it now. I really do. I stared at her treeing to decide if I believed her treeing. To decide if I even wanted to part of me, did part of me still wanted to protect her even now? But another part, the tired, stretched, burned out part, just wanted her to leave me alone. "You said what you came to say," I told her quietly. "I appreciate that." She nodded. "Okay." We stood up at the same time, awkwardly. She didn't hug me and I didn't offer. We just parted. I watched her walk back to her car. I felt neutral, not angry, not sad, just tired. I didn't know if that was healing or just the end of feeling anything. But it was something I didn't expect to hear from her again. Not for a long time. That coffee shop meeting had the finality of a quiet truce. Not peace, but a ceasefire. A way to keep each other from bleeding out completely. But 3 weeks later, a manila envelope showed up in my mailbox. There was no return address. Just my name written in her handwriting. I recognized it instantly from old birthday cards. Inside were a few items, a short letter, a worn family photo from when we were both kids, and a small pendant that had belonged to our mother, one of the few pieces she never took off. A silver locket with a blurry photo of Jenna and me tucked inside. I held the letter. Last, it was short, no more than a few paragraphs. She wrote that she hadn't known what to say at the coffee shop, that there were things she wished she'd been strong enough to say in person. She said she knew I probably wouldn't forgive her, not really, and that she understood. She wrote, "I'm starting to see the version of our family you lived in. And I don't know how you carried all of that alone. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I reread that line several times. It wasn't a perfect apology, not even close, but it wasn't performative. Either there was no but tacked on then. No justification hiding between the lines. Just an acknowledgement, and weirdly, that did more than I expected. So I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure I wanted to, or could. My instinct was still to flinch every time I heard her name, to brace for some kind of passive-aggressive jab or emotional landmine. Forgiveness wasn't a switch I could flip. Instead, I folded the letter, put the locket in my jewelry box, and went on with my life that fall. I took another trip, this time to the Olympic Peninsula. Something about walking under thick canopies of moss and filtered light made me feel a little more human. I hiked alone, breathed in damp earth and salt air, and started sorting through years of internal clutter. There were things I hadn't realized I was carrying. Guilt, mostly not for what I did, but for how much of myself I gave up in the process. I kept thinking about this. One moment. A few years back, when Mom had gotten confused and called me the neighbor girl in front of Jenna. She hadn't corrected her, just laughed and went along with it, like I really was someone else's kid. It stung. Then it stung more now, as I had been. The neighbor girl, always close, always helping, but never really in the picture. That memory stayed with me more than any others. A few months later, around December, I got a call from an unknown number. I don't usually pick up those, but for some reason, I did. It was Jenna. "Again, don't hang up," she said immediately. Voice breathless. "I just listen. I'm not asking for anything. Okay? I just wanted to tell you something." I stayed silent. "I found a therapist. She said I've been going hard, but it's helping." And I realized, I need to stop acting like the past didn't happen. I can't fix it, but I can try not to repeat it. He paused, like she was giving me space to hang up. I didn't. "No, I'm probably the last person you want to hear from," she said. "But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to do better, not for Mom or Dad, just for me, and maybe, eventually, for us. If you ever want that." It was the first time I'd ever heard her sound uncertain, vulnerable. Even I didn't say much, just that. I appreciated the call. We hung up after a few awkward moments of silence. That was it. She didn't push for more. She didn't ask me to meet up or pretend everything was fine again. She just left that door cracked, barely open but not shut. And I didn't slam it closed either. From there, things moved. Slowly, we started texting. Just short messages, no big conversations. A funny photo from our childhood here. A memory about our dog growing up there. Sometimes she'd ask a question about our parents' routines. Things she never paid attention to, I could tell. She was trying to understand them through my eyes, or maybe understand me. He sent a Christmas card. I didn't send one back, but I kept it by spring. She asked if she could visit just a day. She wrote no expectations. Just, "I'd like to see you if that's okay." I didn't answer right away. In fact, I let it sit for over a week. Then one Saturday morning, I found myself vacuuming the guest room just in case. She arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon in mid-April. I remember because I'd been watching the sky all morning, waiting for it to break. There was something poetic about it, her showing up while it drizzled steadily, outside the same way she used to rush in from the backyard as a kid, soaked to the bone, expecting someone else to hand her a towel. This time I didn't greet her at the door. I just left it unlocked and went back to the kitchen. I heard her step inside, her cautious footsteps. On the hardwood, the soft click of the door shutting behind her. "Hey," she called out quietly. "It's me." I know I set in motion to the tea kettle already. On the stove she walked in like someone visiting a stranger's house, eyes scanning photos on the wall. The modest living room Nova curled up on her cushion by the heater. Jenna offered hair a small smile when our eyes finally met. "You cut your hair," she said. "Yeah, last fall it looks good." I didn't reply. We sat in the kitchen for a few minutes, with nothing but the sound of the kettle and the hum of the refrigerator between us. I poured tea into two mismatched mugs, not out of sentiment, but because that's what I had. She accepted it with both hands like it was a peace offering. She didn't start talking right away, and it didn't push. Eventually she looked up. "It's weird seeing your place," I realized. "I've never actually been here." "That's not weird." "I said you were never interested." She flinched. At that fair, Jenna always had a way of bouncing back when confronted. But now there was no deflection, no sarcasm. She just sipped her tea and let that truth hang. "I was thinking about Mom's birthday the other day," she said finally. "How she used to make that weird pineapple upside-down cake, even though none of us liked it." I chuckled. In spite of myself, it was always burnt. She used to get so mad if we didn't eat it. She'd say it was tradition. We both smiled, a small shared laugh hanging in the space between us, and just like that, the ice cracked, not melted, not gone, but shifted enough for conversation to start. Jenna glanced toward the window. "I thought about them a lot lately, what they left behind, what they didn't." I stayed quiet, letting her fill the silence. "I used to think they were perfect." She continued, "Or close to it. And I hated anyone who challenged that must have been hard." I said dryly, "Since I existed." She didn't rise to the bait. "Yeah." It was another long pause. "I used to think you just wanted to be a martyr," she said, not cry, just honestly. "Like you wanted everyone to know how much you sacrificed." I stared at her. "And now I think you were just trying to survive, and none of us made it easier for you." She looked down, twisting the mug in her hands. "I thought if I ignored the cracks long enough they'd go away, but they didn't. They got bigger, and I let them. I wasn't used to this version of her, quiet, reflective, and not defensive. I didn't need you to save them," I said. "Eventually I just needed you to show up." I know, she said. "I really do." For a while we sat with that. There was no rush, no script, just the rain, the tea, and the long overdue weight of things said too late. Later I gave her the guest room. She brought her own pillow, which made me laugh. She used to drag it everywhere, Asa kid. She didn't talk much that first night. We ate leftovers, watched a documentary she picked from my shelf like she was trying to get to know me by what I owned. At one point, she asked if I'd kept any of Mom's things. I nodded toward a shoebox in the hallway closet. She opened it slowly, reverently. Inside were a few old recipes, some costume jewelry, one of her perfume bottles, and a handwritten note Mom had left on that fridge sometime in 2012 that just said, "Don't forget the cat food. And please, Claire, if you're going to be late, call me. I worry." He stared at it like it was sacred. "Did she ever leave you notes like this?" she asked. "No," I said. She didn't ask why he didn't need to. The next morning she made coffee before I was even up. I walked into the kitchen and found her barefoot hair messy, humming to herself, a song from our childhood I hadn't heard in years. I froze in the doorway. She noticed me, and for once she didn't try to explain herself or fill the silence. She just offered me a cup and said, "I wasn't sure how you take it, but I guessed he got it wrong, but I drank it anyway." Jenna stayed for 3 days. That might not sound like much, but for us it was a marathon. 3 days of cautious conversation, shared meals, and fragile reconnection. No dramatic breakthroughs, no sobbing reconciliations, just the slow, uncertain process of two women trying to see each other clearly after decades of resentment and distance. The first day we talked mostly about the past. The second Day we touched on the aftermath, the will, the lawsuit. The silence between us, she didn't defend herself. Anymore, I didn't go for the jugular. We sat with what had been done, not to rehash it, but to finally stop pretending it hadn't. Happened by the third day, something shifted, the tension loosened. There were actual moments that felt easy, maybe not comfortable, but less strained. We even laughed. Once really laughed over a memory of Dad trying to fix the sink and flooding the entire kitchen for the first time in years. We weren't enemies, we were just two tired sisters trying. When she left, she hugged me. Not a quick own-armed thing, a real hug. She held on for a second too long, and I let her. She said, "Thank you for letting me in." I didn't say anything back, I just nodded. After she left, I sat on the porch for a while, watching the rain again. The air felt different, not lighter. His real, and I thought, maybe this was it. Maybe this was the best kind of justice I'd get. Note an apology. Carved in marble, note repayment for all those years. Just her, finally seeing me, finally understanding. But life, it seems, has a strange sense of timing. About a month later, I got a call from a woman named Riley. She was a realtor in Austin, Jenna's city. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, "but I believe you're listed as a co-signer on a property application with Jenna Linwood." I blinked. What? She went on to explain that Jenna had applied for a mortgage on a small fixer-upper outside of Austin and listed me as a financial reference. Not a co-signer exactly, but the bank had flagged some documents she'd submitted and noticed. "My name, wait. I said she used my financials." Riley hesitated. "I really can't say more, but if you weren't aware of this, you might want to speak with her directly. There may be some irregularities." I hung up, stared at the phone, and then I laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh that comes out sharp and hollow, because it's tangled in disbelief. I gave her a second chance. I let her in, and she still tried to use me. Maybe not with malice, maybe just out of habit, but still. I sent her a single text. "Did you list me on a mortgage application without telling me?" She replied 10 minutes later. "It's not what it sounds like. I was just trying to boost my approval odds. I wasn't going to actually involve you." I didn't reply. He said I called a lawyer. Same one who helped me with the house. He helped me file a formal financial affidavit, disavowing any connection to Aver's application, and included documentation of her past attempt to claim property she never owned. The bank dropped her application. Jenna called me. I didn't answer. She emailed me long and dramatic, saying I'd humiliated her and that she just wanted a chance at stability. I deleted it 2 weeks later. I got a letter in the mail. This one wasn't from her. It was from a mediation service. Apparently, she'd started the process of contesting something else from the state. Some insurance policy payout that hadn't been distributed, except the joke was on her C during probate. I discovered something interesting because I'd paid the property taxes on the house for so many years, and because the house was in my name when my parents passed, I'd been entitled to a reimbursement from their modest life insurance policy. A policy she assumed she'd get in full, but by the time the dust settled and my expenses were deducted legally, there was nothing left. I never told her. She found out the hard way, when her lawyer sent her the final notice, $0 remaining, balance to beneficiary. She sent me on last email just 2 words, "Well played." And it was not because I ruined her, not because I got rich, I didn't, but because I walked away clean with nothing hanging over me. I protected myself, drew the line, and let her face the consequences of her own entitlement. For once I had the power quietly, wiggly completely. I never raised my voice. I never fought dirty. I didn't need to. I had the receipts. I had the house. I had the truth. And for the first time in my life, I had peace. She lost the house she never owned. I kept the life I finally built, and that was enough.